Good morning. From CNN Center, I'm Bob Kane.
And I'm Marianne Laughlin. Coming up next on Daybreak, Oliver North returns to the stand today following weekend rallies of support for the former White House aide.
Jury selection begins today in the perjury trial of longtime presidential aide Michael Deaver in federal court.
And a hospital in Columbus, Ohio confirms over 24 workers were exposed to large amounts of blood from an AIDS victim last month. It will be months before officials confirm if they now carry the AIDS virus. Details on Daybreak after a weather update.
Thank you, Marianne. Temperatures cool today over the upper Mississippi River Valley, just 60s and 70s behind a cold front that'll produce very stormy weather from Texas across the Appalachians all the way up into New England by later on today. Scattered thunderstorms across the southeast, high temperatures 80s and 90s throughout that region, 100 still in the forecast, and dry weather across the desert southwest. A beautiful day across the northwest with readings as high as the 90s across southern Washington. Take a look now at the Monday forecast for some cities around the country. In Philadelphia, it'll be 90 degrees and thunderstorms. Jacksonville, partly cloudy, 96. Evansville, Indiana, thunderstorms in 84. Scotts Bluff, partly cloudy, 80 degrees. Winslow, Arizona, 94 and sunny today. Burlington, 91 and thunderstorms. Atlanta, partly cloudy, 94. Fargo, North Dakota, partly cloudy, 74. And Tucumcari, New Mexico, sunny and 92 degrees. A complete weather update, all the news, all the sports, coming up on Daybreak.
All of us have mountains to climb and obstacles to overcome. For people with multiple sclerosis, the challenge in life is even greater than for most, for it strikes young adults in the prime of their lives. Today, multiple sclerosis is incurable, but with your support, we are incurably optimistic about tomorrow.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
Colonel North resumes testimony 2 hours from now. Chairman in no way emphasizing a memo from North suggesting that Poindexter tell the president about residuals.
This is Daybreak, Monday, July 13th. With Marianne Laughlin and Bob Kane from CNN Center in Atlanta, and Reed Collins in Washington.
Good morning. Well, Oliver North begins what bids to be his final day in the Iran-Contra chair this morning with a focus on a memo he'd sent his then-boss Admiral Poindexter last September. That memo suggested the president be briefed about Iran arms sales residuals for other purposes, not necessarily the Contras, though. And there is a check mark on that memo indicating this was done, or at least the memo was seen. Committeeman Warren Rudman, New Hampshire Republican, said yesterday he's expecting Poindexter to pretty much mirror North.
I believe that Poindexter will confirm a good deal of what he has to say. I think there will be some differences between their testimony, and there will be differences between North's testimony and other people's testimony subsequent to this Monday.
And on this Monday, the hearings resume just 2 hours from now, and so will CNN's live, uninterrupted coverage. Michael Deaver's perjury trial gets underway today in Washington. Jury selection. The former Reagan aide is charged with failing to tell the Congress and a grand jury the truth about his lobbying activities after he left the administration. Now, Deaver says he's innocent. Also, he challenges the legal standing of the independent counsel, the man who brought the indictment, Whitney North Seymour. Seymour says Deaver perjured himself to hide violations of the Ethics in Government Act and also violations of White House policy on post-employment contacts. A number of Stinger anti-aircraft missiles shipped to the Afghan rebels through the CIA reportedly are being short-stopped in Pakistan. United Press reports only about a third of the 600 Stingers shipped last year actually reached the American-backed Afghan rebels. Intelligence sources say Pakistan wants those shoulder-fire missiles for itself, has little hope, though, of getting congressional approval for such a sale, so it siphons them off as they pass through Pakistan, destined for the rebels camped near the borders with Afghanistan. Gunboats believed from Iran attacked a French container ship today in the Persian Gulf. The freighter was raked with machine gun and cannon fire just off the Saudi Arabian coast. Lloyd's of London, the insurer, says no crew members were hurt, but engine room damage has forced the vessel to change course and head now for a nearby port of Dubai.
Security is tight throughout Northern Ireland today to prevent possible riots during massive Protestant marches through Catholic areas. More than 100,000 people are expected to take part in the annual parades, marking a Protestant victory over the Catholics almost 300 years ago. Sporadic fighting this weekend has already left several people wounded, and IRA bomb attacks are feared in those instances. One Protestant man was killed when a sniper in a Catholic area opened fire.
South Korea has a new premier and 8 new cabinet members today. Kim Chung-yul, a former ambassador to the United States, was named as premier, replacing Lee Han-ki. President Chun Doo-hwan accepted the resignations of Lee and the other ministers as part of a plan to remove ruling party officials from the country's government. But opposition leader Kim Young-sam is demanding more of Chun. At a news conference today, Kim called for another estimated 1,300 political prisoners to be freed. That news conference was briefly interrupted by 50 to 100 students and relatives of political prisoners who shouted anti-government slogans.
174 people who claim to be from India have landed in lifeboats on the eastern coast of Canada. The 173 turbaned men and one woman landed near Woods Harbor, Nova Scotia, about 200 miles west of Halifax. They were taken to the Woods Harbor Fire Station for tea and sandwiches. Canada's immigration minister says the people will be deported if they cannot prove that they qualify for refugee status under a new Canadian immigration law. Last August, 155 refugees from Sri Lanka arrived in Newfoundland and were given special permits to remain in Canada.
2 people were killed and 7 others wounded last night when gunmen drove through New York's borough of Queens and opened fire at least 3 different intersections. Police say at least 2 gunmen were involved and they escaped in their car after the shootings. Officers said the 3 locations were known as drug-dealing sites, and a police spokesman says we suspect it had to do with drugs. All the victims were in their teens or early 20s. 2 men died of gunshot wounds. 2 women are in guarded condition. One 16-year-old boy reported in serious condition. Another teenage boy, along with 2 men and a woman, are in stable condition.
Police in Oregon are looking for a woman who escaped Saturday while serving a life prison term for killing her daughter and wounding her son and another daughter. 31-year-old Elizabeth Downs climbed over a fence and escaped from the Oregon Women's Correctional Center at Salem. Downs was convicted in 1984 of shooting her children on a country road near Springfield, Oregon. Precautions have now been taken to ensure the safety of the 2 children who survived the shooting. They have been adopted by the deputy district attorney who prosecuted Downs. A state prison spokesman said the search for Downs is up a blind alley, and he added, quote, "We simply don't know where she is."
Now nearly 6 minutes past the hour. More than 24 emergency and medical workers were splashed with large amounts of blood from an AIDS victim at a Columbus, Ohio hospital. A hospital employee says the victim had been shot and was bleeding profusely. The employee said police and paramedics helped transport the victim to the city's Grant Medical Center. The employee said the workers were trying to save the victim and wore no protective gloves or goggles. A hospital spokesman says none of the 26 employees involved so far has been tested positive for the disease.
China's state airline said today it had offered to transport an American tourist stricken with AIDS between cities in China, but the carrier said it withdrew the offer after the U.S.-based Northwest Airlines refused to fly the man out of China. The tourist fell ill while traveling alone and was taken to a hospital last month. Meantime, American diplomats say they may call in the U.S. Air Force to return the man to the U.S.
Among our lead stories, the perjury trial of former White House aide Michael Deaver gets underway later this morning in Washington. Lawyers are expected to begin drawing from a pool of 100 prospective jurors in the case. CNN correspondent Bob Franken has more.
Michael Deaver was one of the top White House advisors, confidant to President and Mrs. Reagan, their friend for 20 years. Many say, had Deaver not departed to start a private lobbying firm, the administration wouldn't be in the Iran-Contra trouble it's in now. But Deaver is also in trouble, indicted March 18th in connection with his lobbying activities, charged specifically with 5 counts of perjury, allegedly committed during testimony before the grand jury and before a House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee chaired by Congressman John Dingell.
The indictment alleges that I perjured myself when I testified before Mr. Dingell's subcommittee last May and when I testified before the grand jury in June. I did not.
Deaver became the first person indicted under the Ethics in Government Act, which allowed for the appointment of independent counsel Whitney North Seymour. Deaver had requested an independent counsel investigation after charges his lobbying activities violated conflict of interest laws, that Deaver had illegally traded on his White House influence on behalf of clients who paid huge retainers. Those clients included corporations and countries, among them the government of Canada. But shortly before the indictments, Deaver tried to prevent them by arguing the judicially appointed independent counsels are unconstitutional. Some legal experts describe that as merely a delaying tactic.
And as a practical matter, it would turn out that virtually everything that had been compiled in the past could still be used in the future.
It was just this month Supreme Court Chief Justice William Rehnquist gave the final approval to proceed. After all the legal maneuvering, Deaver must now face charges that carry a maximum $34,000 fine and 25 years in prison.
I am confident I have not committed perjury and that I will be acquitted after a trial.
Deaver's once lucrative business has virtually shut down. All this slightly more than 2 years since he departed his job at the very pinnacle of White House power. Bob Franken, CNN, Washington.
It's 9 minutes past the hour. If you've had hot and muggy weather where you are, Valerie Voss says you may not have to hang around with that weather much longer. Here she is with an update. Good morning, Valerie.
You're right, Marianne. We've had some very, very good improvements in the weather across the upper Mississippi River Valley. A cold front pushing down across the region into Ohio and across the northern Texas area will produce some thunderstorms today, and as it continues its trip to the south, it's cooling things off across the region. We'll see thunderstorms producing some heavy rains across east central Texas, also across the lower Ohio River Valley. New England fairly nice for most of the day, but as that system pushes eastward, could be some showers and thunderstorms in the forecast across that region. Across the upper plain states, nice cool weather in the area. Out across the west, very, very quiet weather. High pressure influencing about the western two-thirds of the country. Still hot across the desert southwest. On our high temperature forecast map, you can see what we're talking about in terms of relief from the hot and muggy air. Where temperatures soared and broke records over the upper Mississippi River Valley yesterday, Muskegon, Michigan went to 89 degrees, Alpena 93. We'll see just 60s and 70s behind that frontal system. 80s and 90s in muggy air all the way from northern New England back into Texas for today, and out across the southwest, hot and dry, 100s. Tucson now on their 36th day of 100-degree readings. 70s, 80s, even some 90s across southern sections of Washington and eastern sections of Oregon today. Let's take a look at our Caribbean satellite photograph. There is a tropical disturbance about 700 miles east of Trinidad, moving west about 20 miles an hour. Could produce some heavy rains. It'll affect the Windward Islands, San Juan, St. Thomas, St. Croix, probably by Wednesday sometime. Here's the forecast map now for Alaska, Hawaii, and also the Virgin Islands. Sunny in the Virgin Islands and San Juan, Puerto Rico, with temperatures near 90. Partly cloudy for the Hawaiian Islands, and not too bad, although showers and rain for Anchorage and Juneau today. The forecast now for some cities around the contiguous United States. Hartford, partly cloudy and 90 degrees. Chicago, partly cloudy, 77. Brownsville, Texas, the same, 94, maybe a chance for some thunderstorms. Provo, Utah, and Casper, Wyoming, sunny. 90 in Provo, 82 in Casper. And in Philadelphia, 90. Evansville, Indiana, some thunderstorms, 84. Scottsbluff, Nebraska, partly cloudy and 80 degrees. We'll take a look at the Business Travelers Advisory at the top of the hour. Right now, Bob Kane has more news.
Thank you, Valerie. Hollywood directors and producers are scheduled to meet this morning in a last-ditch effort to avert a strike. But officials of the Directors Guild of America say there is little hope the talks will avert a strike. Members of the DGA plan to strike tomorrow at NBC, Warner Brothers, and Columbia Pictures. But if the strike does take place, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers vows to lock out all Guild members. The directors and producers are at odds over the money paid for the rebroadcast of movies and TV shows. This would be the first strike in the union's 51-year history. And who else is taking a little time off from business as usual?